first, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Welcome back to Fox 12 Now. We are live streaming from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. What you're taking a look at there are some whales that have washed up on the coast of Washington, one going up a river and two on the beach. This was just recent that these were found. We're going to be discussing this and what potentially could have happened there and why this is occurring. To find out a little bit more about that, we're going to have a special guest joining us right now. There we go. We've got John from the Cascadia Research Collective. And John, thank you for having time to talk to us about this and just to try to, understand what it is that's happening there. Before we do that, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and the Cascadia Research Collective so that we know a little bit more about that?
Sure. No, I'm a founder and senior research biologist at Cascadia Research. We're based in Olympia, Washington. We do a variety of work on large whales up and down the West Coast, mostly supporting federal and state governments. We also coordinate marine mammal stranding response in some of the regions of Washington state and for large whales statewide. So we get involved in looking at dead animals, but we also study them when they're alive out on the water.
And how often does it occur that we see, I guess, it'd be great to know more about these specific whales too, but how often do we see whales stranding themselves or going up rivers here in the Northwest?
Yes, no, gray whales, I used to say we have almost 20,000 gray whales that migrate past the coast of Oregon and Washington on their way to and from their migration, their feeding areas and their breeding areas. But that 20,000 number, tragically, is no longer. The most recent estimates of gray whale abundance had them down at 13,000, and it represents almost a 50% decline from what they were 10 years ago. And that reflects this prolonged mortality event we've been in. We've documented, hundreds to thousands of whale deaths, and the abundance estimates that NOAA does for the eastern North Pacific gray whale population have declined by over 10,000 in that period. So it's been a rather precipitous and scary decline. Also, the number of calves born that they documented last year was down to the lowest level they had seen in 50 years of monitoring. So kind of some really concerning things happening with gray whales. And they had survived some mortality events like this in the past, but never had they gone on this long or had this far-reaching a consequence as they are now. And that's what makes these recent deaths. We're up to 6 in Washington state so far this year, and we're early in the year. And we actually have indications of a 7th now that may have stranded, and that's way ahead of what it was even in these elevated recent years.
What is it that's causing this massive mortality rate?
Yeah, I can't say it's fully understood, but everything points to a food-related issue in their primary feeding grounds up in the Arctic. Most of these whales go up and feed up in the northern Bering Sea and up into the Arctic Ocean and the Chukchi and Beaufort Seas, and it looks like a prey-related issue up there. And that's an area that's undergone pretty dramatic ecosystem changes, due to warming and loss of ice cover in that area. And that seems to be affecting, maybe in more complicated ways than we've fully been able to figure out, the prey for gray whales, because a lot of these whales dying are really thin and emaciated. And some of the local populations we have of gray whales, like we have a group that feeds in Puget Sound here that numbers just 20 animals, or there's a group called the Pacific Coast Feeding Aggregation that feeds off Oregon and Washington coast. Those groups seem to be doing better. And it's those larger segment of the population that goes to the Arctic that seems to be really hard hit.
And when it comes to these whales, that are these most recent ones, I guess we can take them, I don't know if they're related or kind of the same issue, but there's 2 separate occasions. It sounds like you said there may be another one. With the 2 whales that stranded themselves on the beach, I noticed, emaciation seemed to be one of those things that was noticed with those animals. And then there was also, from the report that I read, something about a head wound.
Yes, and that's true. And we have seen that in some of these animals. Sometimes these animals that are in poor condition poor body condition, which we think is what is at the kind of core source of this. They end up in unusual areas like up rivers, but they also often become more vulnerable to things like vessel strikes and other injuries. So you'll often see some other things like that come into play, but at the core is this poor condition they're in, leading them to kind of explore new areas and then sometimes become vulnerable to other types of impacts.
Gotcha. So it's that lack of food really is what it comes down to.
Yes, that
And
seems to be the core issue.
would
And
that be
even that photograph you're just showing there, you can see kind of that body shape is kind of really indicative of an animal that's not in great body condition right there. That's a photograph from the animal that was in the river that died.
and how often do you see a whale try to go up a river like that?
It's definitely not their normal habitat, and it's unusual, but it's not at all unprecedented. Especially during these kind of mortality events, we often see a lot of these animals in really poor condition ending up in unusual areas. We have another whale swimming around the southern Puget Sound that's outside its normal habitat. I can think, over the last 20, 30, 40 years of a half dozen other cases where gray whales went up other rivers, and again, I think that's that combination of desperation and maybe debilitation and animals not really having their full faculties as they kind of enter this really difficult stage.
Gotcha. And that makes sense. If they're going through that, yeah, not thinking, looking for food and trying to find any avenue that they can. You mentioned that you think there might be a seventh. Would this be an additional whale in addition to these three?
Yes, another one that we're just kind of researching and trying to figure out right now. And I won't be surprised, our main period of gray whale mortality in Washington, and I think this holds for Oregon as well, is April, May, and June. So we're just entering into the peak period where we normally get most of our strandings. A lot of gray whales are actually still migrating north, haven't even reached, our shores. So we could see this go on for a number of months.
Wow. And you said this is the most that you've seen.
This is for this early in the year. Like I looked at last year when we ended up with 17 strandings, and last year only one had occurred by the beginning of April.
Wow. And I guess, what is there anything that people can do to assist in this situation, or even what do you do if you do find a whale that's stranded like this?
Yes, well, certainly report them to the authority. We all operate under the authority of NOAA, so they kind of have a stranding hotline. But even the report to the Coast Guard if you're out on the water will get to NOAA. That's key. And then I think the other thing, since this really looks like this is a result of climate change affecting their key habitat, it's whatever people can do to both, politically convince people this is real, it's having an impact, on species, and that, we personally and our country needs to be doing a better job of leading the world, if you will, on reducing carbon inputs that are affecting climate.
And again, just to reiterate for everybody out there too, so you're anticipating with this many this early in the season that we're going to see more.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, John, hey, thank you very much, for joining us and just to talk about this. It really is interesting, and it's unfortunate that this is going on. For people who want to learn more, both about gray whales, but also about the work that you all do there at Cascadia Research Collective, would you mind letting them know where they can go to find out that information?
Yes, no, absolutely. NOAA, the government agency, has some valuable information on their site. They're the agency that actually monitors the gray whale population and those calf counts I referred to. So that's a great source of information online. Cascadia Research, we try to put our latest reports and news items on our website. That's cascadiaresearch.org. You can also sign up there. We have from YouTube to Facebook to Instagram that you can keep up with our information. We do work throughout the North Pacific, Hawaii, down the U.S. West Coast, and so there'll be updates about the research we are engaged in.
All right, John, thank you very much for joining us here. I really appreciate your time in educating people more about these gray whales and just what's happening here in the Northwest.
Yes, great to talk to you. Thank you.
And for everybody watching, as I mentioned before, we are live streaming here. We're going to take a quick break. We'll switch gears. We've got more here between now and 4 o'clock. We will be talking about the Artemis 2 mission as they get ready to go around the dark side of the moon. We'll be live streaming that. We're also going to hear from the Portland Fire's new head coach. So wide range of topics, but whatever platform you're watching on, thank you for doing so. And we've got more information on all of these at kptv.com. But a quick break right now. We'll be back in a few with more Fox 12 Now.